In here, it's always Friday. TGI Fridays at 3330 Veterans Boulevard in Metairie, corner of North Holland. Look at these salads. Look at these burgers. Look at these fries. You talk about fresh. You talk about good. Everything you ever want. Check out the eggs. Awesome. Great dressing as well. I had the balsamic vinaigrette just a short time ago, and I highly recommend it. It's sportsNOLAtv from sportsNOLA.com on WHNO, and a pleasant good evening to you, Ken Trahan. As always, great to have you with us on this Monday evening, and so much to talk about. We have a special show for you here as we review the year in review in sports that has been in the calendar year running from the time we started until the present. 10 top stories that we've selected, which we'll review in detail, and we'll look at some others that didn't make the cut as well, and what has been a very big, very entertaining, sometimes controversial sports year in the New Orleans area. Ken Trahan, joined by our usual host of guests who have done a great job with us on this first season of sportsNOLAtv. Brian Ali Walsh of sportsNOLA.com. Brian, great to have you with us once again, my friend.
Kenny, thank you. And one of the top 10 stories for our viewing audience is going to be that Torrance and I have survived the very first year.
Without needing a tackling dummy for a second time to separate these two gentlemen, which of course did occur during the course of the year. They still had their voices, although they've been yelling at each other for much of the last 6 months. Torrance Small, former New Orleans Saints wide receiver, great to have you with us, my friend.
Hey, how we doing, Ken? Glad to be back. Hey, the Bible tells us, forgetting what's behind and pressing forward for what is ahead. I have put behind all those things I said about Brian, and now I can truly say, forgive me.
You're completely forgiven, and you're wrong, too.
Wow, we are sinners saved by grace. 1 John 1:9, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive our sins and purify us from all unrighteousness. Boy, do we need to embrace that scripture. All three of us, for that matter. We're in need of forgiveness, but it's nice to see that these guys are extending the hand of peace here this evening.
The olive branch.
The olive branch.
No hot seat today.
And speaking of peace, we've got some significant pieces to get into, the top 10 sports stories of the year. And we'll get it started in just a moment from TGIF. It's sportsNOLAtv. Glad you've joined us here on WHNO. A lot of top stories to talk about for this past season in sports from sportsNOLAtv and sportsNOLA.com. How about Jimmy Graham and his breakout season? Unbelievable year that he put together. What a future he has. Almost 100 receptions, over 1,300 yards, 11 touchdowns, and of course a Pro Bowler and All-Pro selection. The second most receiving yards by a tight end in NFL history. Of course, Rob Gronkowski eclipsed Graham after Graham had set the previous record during the course of a game. They were going tit for tat on the same day, the final day of the NFL regular season. Ken Trahan, sportsNOLAtv, and Torrance, Jimmy Graham is a special young man, both on and off the field. What a future he has.
Oh, yes. He's a young man that had some adversity, but persevered and overcame those adversity, went out for basketball and ended up playing football, had too many fouls in basketball, and look at the type of player he is right now. Great player.
All right, we're going to start with our top 10 stories of the year now in sports locally, and let's start with number 10 as we go in descending order, and our 10th top story of the year. And here it is. Take a look. Final four returning to New Orleans. Brian, you had a chance to cover the event. It was great to see this event back in New Orleans, and the Kentucky Wildcats emerged victorious.
Well, I'll tell you what, and you know, the most amazing thing about this tournament was so many guys are entering the pros after this tournament. 6 players off the Kentucky team could possibly be taken in the first round, which is incredible.
Nearly a decade between Final Fours. I'm sure we'll get it back again soon, Torrance. This was a success.
Oh, yes, great success. 2 great teams, 2 great programs that we had to come down, and they filled up the seats, and they also brought a lot of revenue to the city.
Wildcats celebrating as they win the national championship, get the championship trophy, and John Calipari has the monkey off his back, so to speak, as Kentucky wins it. They were the best team, and they proved it here in New Orleans. Not too long after being in New Orleans for the SEC basketball tournament, where they actually finished second to Vanderbilt. So a very strong accomplishment by Kentucky, and the Final Four, by all accounts, was a huge success in the New Orleans area. And the newly configured dome, well, that worked out very well too. Time now to take a look at our 9th biggest story of this past sports year. And our 9th biggest story finds us uptown at Tulane University, where Curtis Johnson becomes the new head football coach at Tulane University, and thus becomes the first African-American coach in Tulane football history. And Torrance, this is significant for you. It's significant for all of us. It's just nice to know that we live in a place and in a time where it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what the color of your skin is. It matters who you are and what you can do.
Exactly. And first and most of all, he is capable of doing this job. He is a great guy, great pick for this team. Being an African American, I think it's great. It gives us our young something to look up to, not just what's going on in the neighborhoods, but now you have someone that's in the inner city. Tulane is in the inner city, and here now our young kids can grow up and say, "Hey, I can be a coach. I can go to Tulane." I think he'll bring that to the table for Tulane as well.
He may be more appealing to local kids as well, Brian.
I'll tell you what, he's, you know, there are perfect hires at perfect times, and there's time and a place, and I think this could be Curtis's time and place. He's the kind of guy that I think if, it's a big if the university supports and surrounds him and provides him with all the necessary things to help him win, okay, I think it's important.
And you look at that bio, guys, and clearly he has the skins on the wall. Miami, a national championship, a Super Bowl victory with the Saints, Torrance. That's going to sell itself to potential recruits as well.
Exactly. Pedigree is great, and that hopefully he can keep some of these inner city kids and keep them at Tulane. As Brian alluded to early, hopefully the university will support him and help in keeping some of these kids here.
Well, if you're going to look at top sports stories, why not a parlay? Our number 8 top sports story of the year deals with Curtis as well, but this is John Curtis Christian School, a special sports year they have had. Unbelievable that John Curtis Christian won 6 state championships in one school year, and that's dizzying. Here they are. Patriots won football. We've seen and done that before, right? They won boys indoor track. They won boys outdoor track. They won boys basketball. They completed a sweep winning girls basketball, and they went undefeated to win softball. And oh, by the way, J.T. Curtis became just the 2nd coach in the United States to ever win 500 games on the high school level. Did it on this night against Clark High School out at Joe Yenny Stadium. It was a special night. They brought back over 200 former players on this night, Brian, and of course Archie Manning presented the commemorative trophy afterwards. This was a great accomplishment.
Absolutely, couldn't happen to a greater guy. You know, it would be hard to find a school in this country that accomplished what John Curtis accomplished this year. And you know, our hats on this show go off to JT and his group of great coaches, great school, outstanding season.
And I know you know a lot about this program, Torrance. You've been around it, you've seen them, you've worked with some kids, you know and understand how they operate, and clearly this is a tremendous accomplishment for a 2A school.
Exactly. Now, to accomplish a feat of this magnitude, it takes a lot of moving parts to work together. And one thing, they all work together. Understand, they're not the most talented team out there, but one thing they do, they all play together and they all perform together as a team.
Well, I think they were the most talented team clearly in softball, the most talented team in football, the most talented team in girls basketball, and I think they were the most talented team in boys basketball too, Brian.
And I'll tell you what, you know, the thing that comes to mind, the word is class, okay? They played and win with class, and I think that is certainly a testimony of what that school represents, J.T. Curtis being at the helm.
Yeah, but I saw this school, and I've seen some other schools. Like I said, great kids, kids that can play. But I just seen some teams with better talent, but they just don't play as a team the way this group does.
And then in track and field, having Malachi Dupree and having another Duvio that dominates in the field event certainly did not hurt their cause. An incredible sports year for John Curtis, winning 6 state championships. Which brings us to our 7th biggest story of the year, and this one surrounds the round ball on the professional level, and your New Orleans Hornets and Chris Paul leaving the Hornets. That was a monumental deal, and when you lose Chris Paul, you lose the face of the franchise. You lose a guy that was great on the floor and great off the floor in the community, and obviously, Brian, that was a big deal.
huge deal, and it was all part of that controversial start from the lockout out. I mean, from the players strike out. Losing Chris Paul, who's an outstanding point guard in the NBA, but I think, you know what, this franchise has weathered the storm, and I know we'll deal with it as we go forward today, but it's weathered the storm, and Chris Paul is going to ultimately, what we've got for him is going to help this franchise in the long run.
Of course, where Chris Paul is concerned, Torrance, you had a situation where you had the trade that was not, and then the trade that was. Of course, initially, they made the three-way trade that would have brought them Kevin Martin, Lamar Odom, Luis Scola, and Goran Dragic from Houston and Los Angeles, respectively. The Lakers were going to get Paul, and the Rockets would get Pau Gasol. And in retrospect, Dragic had a good year. Scola's a good player. Martin got hurt. Odom had a terrible year with Dallas. I really think they did better with the second deal, which ended up being the deal that they ended up making, where they get Eric Gordon, they get Al-Farouq Aminu, and they get Chris Kaman, plus the first-round pick, which turns out to be a lottery pick. Eric Gordon, if healthy, he can be elite. Al-Farouq Aminu got a chance to show his stuff later in the season and distinguished himself pretty well. He has upside. Chris Kaman played well. I don't know if they will keep him, but he played well. So by and large, I think the second trade, if they can retain guys, works out better.
Yeah, and that's the thing. In time, this will show, was this a great trade or not? Just like in the draft, we have to wait a couple years to see how this thing turn out with some of the draft picks that they received.
Bottom line, Brian, is they now have a future with 2 first-round picks, possibly Eric Gordon, some of the other young players that they got a chance to see and play this year, and we'll get into the ownership later in the show. But the bottom line is now they seem to have a future.
Yeah, and I think it was critical that the way that they played, they've secured more of their wins down the stretch. They provided some hope, and again, I go back to the franchise has weathered the storm, and now there's brighter days ahead.
As a result of their season, you know, from the bad comes good. The bad was the record. The good is the fact that their chances in the lottery are pretty good. As you look at their percentage possibility here, well, they got a shot to get the #1 pick. It's not likely, but it's possible. And as a result, that's what comes out of not having a really good year, Torrance, and that's not such a bad thing.
No, it's not a bad thing, you know, with the trades, being able to get 2 possible lottery picks. I think it's great. You can trade, you can do a lot of different things with it to bring in some other players here. And right now, that #1 pick is going to be crucial.
I agree. And the key word is what you said is trade, T. Yeah. You know, you've got those 2 lottery picks. You can pick up a young, potentially top player out of the colleges, and then use that other one to perhaps move a trade or fatten a trade. I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities, and these guys have shown, Demps and what Dell Demps has shown, that they're capable of making good deals.
As well as Monty Williams.
Absolutely.
I like to see this guy coach a team with some players, with some talent. And I guarantee you, man, we'll love the Hornets once he gets some players in there.
You might not recognize the roster when we look at what happens next year in terms of the New Orleans Hornets, but you're probably going to like what you see. When we return in just a moment, we'll count down our 6th, 5th, and 4th top sports stories, marching forward toward #1 as sportsNOLAtv continues from TGI Fridays in Metairie on WHNO Channel 20. Our next honorable mention story for the past sports year, Tulane announcing a new on-campus football stadium initiative with a cost of $60 million and a capacity of 30,000 seats, but hold everything. The City Council passed an interim zoning district measure on May 3rd, which could delay the proposed opening of this facility in 2014. So the battle is joined. CBD, APB, APR, CIA, NBA, what's in an initial? IZD. We better get used to that, I suppose. And Mitch Landrieu says he'll veto it, but the fight has been joined, and we'll see what happens with this particular initiative for Tulane. Ken Trahan, sportsNOLAtv, TGI Fridays in Metairie, and our countdown continues for our top 10 sports stories of the year. Let's take a look at #6, and this is the Saints' record-setting 2011 season. This was truly a special year, Brian, for this team offensively and all the things that they were able to accomplish, from Drew Brees to Jimmy Graham to Darren Sproles, the points scored, everything imaginable. Drew Brees, 5,476 passing yards, 13 300-yard games, 486 completions, over 71% completions. Darren Sproles led the league and sets a league record in all-purpose yardage, just doing a phenomenal job. This was an amazing season to watch offensively for the New Orleans Saints, and of course the records continue ad nauseum. Total yards, passing yards, first downs, passing first downs, third down conversions, completions, completion percentage, and the fewest fumbles. Well, you wonder how this team lost a game when you look at those numbers, Brian.
It's incredible, and to think that they were able to do this. I like the idea that Brees and Sproles were the ones that really finished off the record, and 27 years, I believe, since Dan Marino went over had the passing record. So, and you know what? I don't think these records are going to stand as long as they did this first time.
No, football has changed a lot. It's almost becoming two-hand touch. Defensive backs can't touch the receivers anymore.
And you love that.
You're always thinking about receivers and yards. And
hey, it is what it is. But let's not take away from what these guys. And can you imagine? All these records, all these numbers, and he did not. Drew Brees did not win the MVP. Isn't that, how incredible is that?
Well, you bring up a good point, and there are a lot of people that ended up making him their offensive MVP, which is kind of a cop-out to me.
Yeah.
But Aaron Rodgers established it from the outset, and with the record that the Packers had, they were going for that unbeaten season.
Yeah.
So, I can understand the split in voters and stuff like that, but here's the thing. We saw Drew, and we saw an offense that we may never. We were so fortunate to see, and we have seen nothing but great things come from that offense.
Yes.
And I think we're still going to see great things from that offense in the coming years. I really do.
I think so too. We're a well-oiled machine. I tell you, we're attack, and they don't stop. They just keep attacking. If we can get our defense to attack like that, hey, maybe new records.
Be careful about the defense attack.
I know.
We have to be careful.
Pick your time. Pick your time. Pick your place, right?
Not the right word for them right
now. I understand. We didn't even mention Marcus Colston in there. Colston had a remarkable season for the Saints as well, and there were so many great contributors to what was a phenomenal season to watch for the New Orleans Saints. That brings us to our number 5 top story of the year, and this is the incredible regular season that the LSU football Tigers had. In my mind, the best regular season ever in college football. When you consider who they played, when you consider that they still had to go win an SEC championship game, which they did, this was an unbelievable season. Met every challenge, beat everybody, ranked teams left and right. You go undefeated, win 13 in the SEC, Brian, you've done something very special.
Absolutely, and you make a great point, Kenny, is that this arguably regular season might have been the best college football team ever assembled, and it began with such controversy back in August outside the restaurant Shady's in Baton Rouge, and yet they just overcome everything. They beat so many ranked teams either in Tiger Stadium, on the road, and they did it with just incredible fashion.
Not only did they win games, did you see the margin of the way they won ball games? Teams weren't close. Offensively, defensively, special teams, they just beat teams in all phases of the game, and it showed.
You know what I was amazed at is that this team had the ability to push a button and go to another level, because they trailed in many games. But they were so good and talented, both offensively and defensively, they were able to push a button, and a lot of teams can't do that.
They keep the pressure. They keep the pressure, and sooner or later, the other team just had to fold. It was just too much pressure, too much talent, too much ability, and they just couldn't handle it.
Well, you mentioned the distractions, and starting with Shady's and Akeem Hicks' situation and suspensions, and during the season, guys sit out a game, they don't ever tell you they're suspended, then they change quarterbacks after the first guy goes 8-0 during the season. I mean, so many different things that this team dealt with, and they just let it just roll right off their shoulders and continued to win in impressive fashion. It was truly an amazing season for the LSU football Tigers, and we'll get into the ending a little bit later in the show. which brings us to our fourth biggest story of the year, and this involves Tom Benson, but not the New Orleans Saints. It involves the New Orleans Hornets and Tom Benson purchasing the NBA franchise, and it really ensures stability long-term for this franchise, Brian.
I agree, and you know, Kenny, we've talked about it on the show earlier. I was not necessarily in favor of Mr. Benson being involved in the new ownership of this team. I thought that it obviously could present monopoly issues with him owning both sports empires in this town. But I tell you what, in the long run, I think it's going to be really good for not only for the Hornets, but also for the Saints as well. And he's put his stamp on another major sports empire in this city.
Yeah, I think the Hornets' future is bright right now, very bright. Got an owner now, which has some stability. You have a lease that's set, that's going to keep you here for a while. We have a great coach, we have a great general manager in Dempson Williams, and now we have 2 draft picks, possibility of bringing in 2 high draft picks or some trades, however that may work. I just see the future for the Hornets right now is very bright. I'm looking forward to what's going to happen next with him.
He has winning expectations, and Brian, he conveyed that to the team and organization, and I like that.
I do too, and you know what? I would predict that in the very foreseeable future, that Hornets name is going to be exchanged for another name. And I hope it happens, because I think that would be another way that we can put, as our city, put our stamp on our basketball team with our owner in Tom Benson.
Exactly. I think that's great to change the name. I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be something related to New Orleans. Like you said, put our stamp, put our name on it, where we can feel good about it, our team, not the Charlotte Hornets or wherever they come from. We want our own name. We love the Jazz back, but we know we can't get that back. Hopefully we come up with something great that'll represent the city well.
I'm okay with the name, but that really doesn't matter much to me. As long as the name says New Orleans, that's all that really matters. Whatever they come up with is fine. I know some people are going to end up liking it and some won't. That's just human nature, so get over it already before it comes up, because some probably won't like it. Listen, Brian, I harken back to 1966 when the naming contest for the Saints was going on, and a lot of people didn't like Saints. They thought it was sacrilegious, right, and that it might be a curse of some sort. It turned out to be a very good choice.
Right, and you know, I think hopefully if they do change the name, it's certainly going to be significant, and it will be indigenous to our area and what this city means to us. The only concern I have, I just want to point this out. I want to make sure that the Hornets are run as the Hornets. This is an NBA franchise. It's run a heck of a lot differently than an NFL franchise. Let's keep the ownership and everything separate. Let's do it all the way it should be.
Well, we are counting down toward number 1, our top sports story of the year. You won't want to miss it, so stay tuned. And when we come back in just a moment, we'll continue the countdown with our third and second biggest sports story of the last year here on sportsNOLAtv and at sportsNOLA.com. Stay with us. Back in just a moment from TGI Fridays, 3330 Veterans Boulevard in Metairie. Our next honorable mention sports story of the year, Johnny Jones coming home, hired by his alma mater, the LSU Tigers, to take over as their head basketball coach, replacing Trent Johnson, who left the initials LSU for TCU. Of course, Johnny Jones, a DeRitter Dragon, who of course played for the Tigers under Dale Brown, part of a memorable team in the early 1980s, and of course then served as an assistant coach under Dale Brown. So Godspeed to Johnny Jones, and we certainly hope that he can do a great job at LSU. Ken Trahan, sportsNOLAtv, TGI Fridays in Metairie. So glad that you've joined us as we count down to our number 1 top sports story of the last year on sportsNOLAtv. It's time now to take a look at our number 3 top sports story of the year. This is one that is going to smart a little bit. The Saints losing 2 late fourth quarter leads at San Francisco and bowing out in the second round of the NFL playoffs. Brian, this was tough to swallow. They got buried in a deep hole, buried themselves with turnovers, still overcame that, came back, took the lead once, gave it up, took the lead again, and lose the game.
Kenny, even months after that game, it's still hard to understand what happened. I mean, we know what happened, but how in the world could it happen? When Drew led the offense down in that amazing long touchdown march in the final minutes, you know, I think all of us would have bet our houses, anything we had in the bank, that they're going to hold on to this lead. And what do you know? The 49ers go one better. And we didn't, the team didn't hold.
No. Yeah. You know, you look back at this game, and what do we think? At the end of the game, a winning quarterback, you would think Drew Brees in this game. But no, it was Alex Smith. Alex Smith played the game of his life, and at the right time. And we just could not stop them. We could not stop them.
Little did we know, we anticipated that Greg Williams would not come back to this team. Little did we know that the repercussions and ramifications and everything else that would result in the coming months that would come from this game. And you know, I go back, you know, there was a lot of talk about should they put more pressure on Alex Smith, should they drop back, should they. It seemed like every time that the Saints should have zigged, they zagged. And the 49ers just took advantage of it. And but the play that still is going to haunt everybody is the touchdown play.
Yes.
How do you Scott Shanley not moving, look like a statue. John Vilma stepping back. Safeties playing too deep. Not enough pressure, too much. I mean, it was just one mistake after another on that play.
Well, that's something that had been going on all year with the defense. They just haven't been sound on defense. We weren't sound. Scott Shannon, that wasn't something new. That's something that's been happening all year. I've been seeing that. I've been telling you guys that they haven't been doing. That's something, you know, the defense just haven't been playing fundamentally sound. You have to jam that guy. Everybody knows if you're playing a cover 2 near the red zone, or cover 4 that is, you have to jam that guy and help that safety that has the post or the corner. You have to help him out, and that's something that he just didn't do in that play.
They get a free release off the line of scrimmage.
That was the thing.
It's their best player, and he's going against your worst players, basically, at least for that particular discipline of what they're doing, which is covering receivers. Malcolm Jenkins and Roman Harper did not have an interception combined all season long. These are your safeties, and these are the guys you can't leave alone in coverage, and obviously that's what the 49ers got in the matchup based on the defense that was called by Greg Williams. Players make plays. They did not make plays, but as a coach, you've got to put your players in the best position to succeed, and I would suggest to you that Vernon Davis is one of the best pass receiving tight ends in the league, and he can run. Therefore, you don't put safeties who cannot cover or make plays in man coverage against Vernon Davis.
Everybody knew that in order to beat the Saints and go down and score, they were going to have to throw to Vernon Davis. He was the only one that was being effective.
Exactly, but let's look at it. How many passes did the receivers catch? What?
I think one.
One.
If my memory serves me
okay, we coming to the end of the game. Who do you double? Double Vernon Davis. Yeah. you know, double Vernon Davis. Make them throw to the other guy.
And this is in hindsight. I mean, these are things that you thought about at the time of the drive. You know, we're not second guessing here.
Exactly.
These are things that should have been done then.
And what really smarts is that the following week, the New York Giants go to San Francisco and beat the 49ers. The Saints own the Giants.
Yes.
Own them. I am absolutely positively convinced that the Giants, who beat the Packers the previous week and then went on to beat the 49ers, obviously were a team that the Saints would have handled at home in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. I'm convinced of that. Nothing's going to change my mind, but that's all about woulda, coulda, shoulda, quoting a former Saints coach who clearly had the maps where these kind of situations were concerned. Speaking of maps, our next biggest story as we count our way down, well, you know all about this. Another one you like to forget at number 2, the BCS National Championship game in LSU, basically firing blanks against Alabama, who wins the game convincingly, 21-0. And LSU's great season really kind of tarnished, not because they lost, Brian, but because of the fashion they lost in. So inept offensively in this game, they couldn't get out of their own way.
And you know what? It's just a shame. As we were heaping praise on the Tigers just minutes ago on the show, this was one of the worst displays of offensive football that we've seen in a long time. And unfortunately, it came on such a national stage when they could have put their stamp on being the greatest football team of all time, and they laid an egg. I don't know how else to say it. Still trying to figure out the game plan on offense.
And that's the problem. The problem is they weren't prepared. They weren't prepared. They didn't make any adjustments. They weren't prepared. The players looking like deer in headlights. The coaches looking like deer in headlights. They were unprepared. Nick Saban got his team ready. They were prepared. They came out. They did some things they hadn't did all year. They came out throwing the ball. They throwing the little short passes. They put pressure on the defense the whole game, and we just weren't prepared.
In a nutshell, they were out coached.
There we go.
And look, that old saying, great players step up and make great plays in big times, and LSU had its share of great players. There's no doubt about it. All right, and this was a very good, if not a great football team, and they did not answer the call. For whatever reason, you can blame the coaching staff all you want, but players have still
in this game.
Yes, players still have to step up and make plays.
Ken said it earlier. He said it earlier. He said coaches have to put players in the right position to be able to make plays.
Right.
I don't care how talented you are. If you're out of position, you're not going to make some plays. And I just didn't think they were prepared and they weren't in position to do anything in this game.
No, they were clearly out-prepared, out-coached in this game. Anyone who suggests otherwise simply wasn't watching. And if you want to vilify Les Miles, that's fine. It's the same Les Miles that went 13-0 and put them in this position and did a great job. It just so happened that in this game, he didn't have the skins. He simply didn't have the maps to get it done, and his team could not perform against a team, frankly, that was outstanding, and a team that was highly motivated, and a team that got a reprieve and got a second chance, which was part of the big story, Brian, in this game.
Kenny, I agree. And I think when LSU won that first game in Tuscaloosa back in early November, I think Alabama came away with, they were beaten on the scoreboard, but they came away with as much good positive feedback. I believe that they felt that they could win this rematch. And Nick Saban there's a reason why Nick Saban is a successful coach.
And you're right. And we're not saying Les Miles is a bad coach.
No, not at all.
He just got out-coached this game.
Absolutely.
That's what happened. He got out-coached, like I said, had a hell of a season, 13-0, and to go undefeated in the SEC and win the SEC, that is a great job. And beat all the #1 teams, top 10 teams that he did. Great season. You just got out-coached this game.
He did. It's all about one game. Unfortunately, it's the biggest stage, and everybody was watching, and it happened to be in New Orleans, which clearly made it that much more difficult. There were a lot of disappointed people in that stadium, a lot of very disappointed people leaving that stadium, scratching their heads and wondering what just happened here. Again, it wasn't that they lost, it's how they lost. Can't even cross midfield until late in the game. Truly remarkable. Speaking of remarkable, we've had a great year with Marvin LeBlanc. Marvelous Marvin LeBlanc can't be with us today, but we want to thank him for his great support all season long with his marvelous minute. Go to marvinleblanc.com/TV. He gets a sitting ovation here. Way to go, Marvin. And of course, we fully expect Marvin to be back with us when we resume with our second year of Sports NOLA TV coming up late in the summer. Well, you've been waiting an entire show, and when we return in just a moment, we'll have the top sports story of the last year from sportsNOLA.com right here on Sports NOLA TV from TGI Fridays in Metairie. Our next honorable mention story for this past year is all about a tremendous young man, Steve Gleason, diagnosed with ALS in January of 2011, and the diagnosis revealed publicly several months later. And Steve Gleason did not take it sitting down and woe is me or anything of that nature. He established Team Gleason to improve the lives of those with ALS, doing a video diary for his newly born son with his wife Michelle. And you can go to teamgleason.org for more information. Steve's a wonderful young man. Our prayers continue to be with him and his family. And we also want to point out that there are two others that are special to me and special to us. Vince Gibson, who passed away of the same disease this past year, whom I love dearly, and he's greatly missed. And also Jay Rink, former Tulane, and brother Martin Starr, who's battling the same disease with unbelievable dignity. Tremendous young man whom you've seen profiled here on WHNO. We continue to pray for the Gibson family and for Jay and his wife Michelle and the entire Rink family as well. sportsNOLAtv from TGI Fridays in Metairie, 3330 Veterans Boulevard. Our thanks to Ronnie Bouvier and his crew for having us here so often. Boy, were they great, right? They've treated us so good this year, haven't they?
Absolutely. It's a great place for a venue like this. It really is.
And we just thoroughly enjoyed it. I know you enjoyed the food, right, Torrance?
The food is awesome. Love the food. Love being here. Love the atmosphere.
Pounds, haven't you?
No, I have lost it.
What great food. You eat great food and you lose weight too. Incredible.
500 calorie meals they have here.
Ah,
Very good. Good segue.
somehow I missed those, but I enjoyed them nonetheless. I can assure you. And we'd like to tell you that we enjoy our #1 story for the last year, but frankly, none of us enjoy it. Listen, we are fans too. We have a job to do. Therefore, we do our job in fair fashion. We have to do it in objective fashion, and we do our level best to present things in that way. And obviously, that is the case with our #1 story, which of course is Bountygate. And Brian, I think it's very realistic. We are humans. We have a lot of people that we know involved in this. None of us wants to see the New Orleans Saints fail. We all want to see them succeed. Many of us are natives, and some of us who are natives have been here for a long time, like yourself, who genuinely care about these people. So it smarts, it hurts, but the story clearly has transcended all stories. To me, it's the top national story.
There's no doubt. It's incredible when you think, and we talked about this, the multi-levels to this story. It's not just the disciplinary action that's been handed down or the fines and suspensions. There's so many levels to this that are still to be out, to played out in the public eye. It's just an incredible story that continues to get curiouser and curiouser.
Yeah, so many things that are still being determined. Now the appeal, where the players are concerned, going on. The original penalties, of course, which hit Sean Payton very hard, Joe Vitt hard, Mickey Loomis hard, Greg Williams, of course, very hard. There are the penalties, which now, of course, you are familiar with. The Saints fined $500,000. Coach Payton suspended for a year. Mickey Loomis suspended 8 games. Greg Williams suspended from the league indefinitely. Joe Vitt suspended for 6 games. The Saints docked a couple of second-round draft picks, one in the most recent draft, one next year that could be restored with good behavior, whatever that means. And we'll see. I certainly hope that's the case. And no matter how you feel about this situation, clearly you are emotional about it. My feelings have been consistent from day one. The Saints were wrong. They deserve to be penalized primarily because they lied and they covered something up. Not because they did something that hasn't been done over and over again in the history of league annals. And in a time and place where safety is now the biggest issue and people really want to attack it, or they're grandstanding, or both, this was not a good time for this. The penalties clearly deserve to be imposed. This severe? I don't think so personally. I don't think the coach should have gotten a year. I certainly don't think the coach should be told how to live his life and who he can be with, who he can talk to, away from it all. Personally, I think that's ridiculous. We live in the United States of America, and that's my opinion, right or wrong. And Brian, I know you felt the Saints deserved to be punished as well, based upon what they had done. But again, I know you felt like some of these things were a bit extreme.
And we haven't really mentioned even the player suspension. John Vilma's gone for a full season. Those kind of things. Will Smith suspended for 4 games. 2 former Saints that are being suspended as well, Anthony Hargrove and Scott Fajita. So again, these are the multi-level that we're talking about. And you know what? And these are still have to be played out also in the Court of Appeals, if you will. But Roger Goodell and all the multi-lawsuits that are coming against the league, the tragic passing of Junior Seau, Dave Dorson, all of these things, Torrance, that are now part of this whole Bountygate story.
Exactly. You guys know how I feel about this. I'm really against all these penalties. Now, should they be penalized? Yes, because they did lie. I do understand that. But let's look at this. Let's look at this. What are the suspensions for? Is it because of intent? Because they said they're going to hurt somebody? If you go look at NFL films, you hear older players back in the days, all the way up to now, defensive guys talking about what they're going to do to an offensive guy. I'm going to knock his head off. I'm going to, knock him to next week. All those are intent to bring bodily harm. That happens if it's about the money. You have pools of money in there all the time, different things, whether it's receivers or defensive backs with the interceptions and whatnot. It's a lot of different things that brings upon money that guys put in winner take all in a pool. Just a friendly little thing. But to say these guys went out and tried to do something intentionally to hurt somebody illegally, I think it's just totally wrong. I think it's totally wrong. Because one, you got 3 years. As a matter of fact, you got all the film. I haven't seen not one film that shows evidence where the Saints hurt someone. If you go back over this past year, you only had 7 unnecessary roughness calls.
Well, they hurt Brett Favre in this game, but he came back in the game, and then the Bears highlights, then a shot here on Warner. That's a legal play.
Yes.
I didn't think it was necessary. That's a huge hit, but that's also legal. Now that's a cheap shot and stupid, frankly.
Yeah, but the thing is, none of that is outside of football, though. None of that is outside of football.
Torrance,
it's not outside the lines of football.
There's a play that hasn't gotten any really recognition during the whole Bountygate scandal, and if you remember,
I don't like the name Bounty.
If you remember on the touchdown return by Tracy Porter in the Super Bowl, Will Smith flattened Peyton Manning on the sideline, on the return. He hit him and laid him out. Now, look, I'm just saying, did that have to happen? Peyton Manning couldn't catch a comb. It just makes you, I'm just wondering, here's my point. It just makes you wonder, are we going to have to analyze every play subsequently, you know? And that's a play that you could look at.
Well, let me tell you, if I was the players, yes, analyze all of them. Show me something outside of football. Show me something outside of football that happened that showed all this intent, all this bounty, all this, we're trying to ruin somebody's career and all. Show me that. Show me that. Please show me that.
Kenny alluded to
Nobody has shown it. Hadn't been proven.
And I think that's part of the appeals process.
I remember. Let me put you on one. I remember being on punt return. Okay, on punt return, we kick the ball. I go and try to get the punt. If I can't get the punt, I peel back, and I get the punter. And I was trying to knock his head off. And you might say, "Oh man, he couldn't make the play." Hey man, he couldn't make the play. If the play is still going on and it's still alive, it's still in football, play football. Bottom line.
Kenny alluded to it early in this segment. Is that I firmly believe, Kenny, that had they ceased and desisted after the Super Bowl season,
it's over with.
It's over with. I don't even think it's an issue, okay? But they did not. And that is why it is where it is today. That is why the punishment and the sanctions came down so darn hard.
I agree. I agree. And I think the litany of things that the NFL had against the Saints certainly mattered here. The fact that there were 4 or 5 different so-called incidents that involved the Saints that really perturbed the league. I do think they were keeping score. I do think they played addition. And when they came up with the answer was, this is what we're going to do to you. So maybe you might want to curb your way of doing business over an extended period of time. I absolutely believe that it was an equation, that it was an add-on situation, and that resulted in where we are now. That's my opinion. We'll take a timeout. When we return in just a moment, we'll have a final discussion about these top sports stories as we continue with sportsNOLAtv from TGI Fridays, 3330 Veterans Boulevard in Metairie, corner of North Holland. Starting next week, it's our sportsNOLAtv Spotlight. It premieres next Monday at 6 p.m., where you'll have a chance to learn about former Saints players and a lot of people that have been involved in the Saints organization, catching up with where they are now, what they're doing, what's important in their lives, and reflecting upon their time with the Saints. That's sportsNOLAtv Spotlight beginning next Monday, May 14th. In here, it's always Friday, TGI Fridays, 3330 Veterans Boulevard in Metairie. Call 504-887-7788 for more information. TGI Fridays. Wonderful host of sportsNOLAtv, Ken Trahan, Brian Ellie Walsh, Torrance Small, coming to the end of our first season of sportsNOLAtv, and it's been an absolute pleasure to be coming at you each and every week. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we know we're going to make this bigger and better, starting with our second season in late July when, ta-da, NFL training camp gets underway. But as we move forward, Brian, there's a lot of big sports stories still to come. We know what will happen during the football season, but some more big events. Arena Bowl coming to New Orleans, the Women's Final Four coming to New Orleans, the Super Bowl coming to New Orleans, all within this calendar year. And then, of course, in 2014, another NBA All-Star game comes to New Orleans.
It's great to be in the city of New Orleans for a lot of reasons. And from all the sports venues that you just mentioned, Kenny, it's great to be in our business and what we do for a living, to be talking and capturing about these sports.
Yes, I think that says a lot about the city. After taking this black eye with the thing going on with the Saints, with the Bounty Gate, and all these other negative things that's been happening, to still get these other professional franchises still want to come down and participate in our city is a great thing.
Well, there are many other things that we have to look forward to as well. UNO remaining Division I in athletics. I think that's important, and that's a good thing for our community. And of course, they have some hires to make in the very near future that will be important. We salute them and wish them nothing but success. Loyola and Xavier doing a very good job in intercollegiate athletics on the NAIA level. Delgado always doing a good job at the junior college level. High school sports, a passion of ours at sportsNOLA.com. So many great stories, not just the John Curtis Christian story, which was special, but many others too, Brian. And you coach in high school athletics, so that is a passion. And there's always great stories to be had there and many more to come.
Absolutely, and for the very reasons that we talked about, dealing with the Saints, the Hornets, Tulane, a possibility of a new stadium coming up in 14, Curtis Johnson's first year. I mean, all of these are wonderful stories that are going to play out in the coming months, and again, it's just wonderful to be part of this.
And perhaps the biggest story of the year, the fact that Brian Alley Walsh and Torrance Small are sitting next to each other, not separated by anybody or by a tackling dummy, and they're getting along. It's all peace. It's all God's children. And everybody said, Amen. Right?
Don't believe a word of it.
It's been a pleasure, my friend.
I enjoyed it.
Brian,
Kenny, thanks.
A real pleasure.
Buddy, always.
I want to thank our crew, too. They did a great job. Look at these guys hugging. I mean, this is getting ridiculous here. I'll tell you. But I love it. I really do. I want to thank our crew. I want to thank Ronnie Bouvier and TGI Fridays, all of our fine sponsors that made this possible this year. Dean Powery, Ken Berthelot, Nicole, all of them who did a great job. Now, this is Ken Trahan for Brian and for Torrance saying thanks for joining us, and be a good sport. God bless you, one and all. We are rounding third and heading home. So long.